Good evening and welcome to another episode of the fourth episode of DesignUp Circuit 2020. Before we start and before I hand it over to your host for this evening, Shiva, let me apologize for all the messes that you had in terms of registering. Hopefully that's all behind you. And probably we're going to see a good number of you attending today. So without further ado, let me pause and hand it over to Shiva.
Hello. Hello all. We are at 177 and growing rapidly. You can see the participant numbers climbing up, which is down there. Welcome in. I'm going to babble a little bit so that I can let you guys all in so that we can have we can hand it over to the stars at the right time. Welcome to the fourth online edition of DesignUp Circuit. I'm Shiva, your host for the evening. We took a short break. I mean, it was very short. It's about a week's break. And got back with this Star Wars themed idea. And I personally call it the return of the JD for J. Datta, founder DesignUp, right? Just kind of appropriate, I guess. He's the one who came up with this idea of let's do something on May the 4th be with you. I think it's a good time to kind of start with the first poll. JD, will you bring the first poll up, please? So we're going to have about 4 polls right through this stuff. You will see the theme. The first question actually says, when do you think we can get back to work?
Shiva, just
Yes.
a quick one. You need to give me the host thing.
Right.
These things happen in online stuff. So handing over the mic. Or you can just fire the poll up yourself, whichever.
Yeah, I'm just launching the poll. Yeah. Okay,
Awesome.
There you go. The first question, the first poll is this. When do you think we can get back to work in the office or studio without restrictions? No masks, no social distance, full house. 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 quarters, which is a year, and 4 years. You'll see the results right there as your answer. You get about 20 seconds as I continue the introductions, really. Look at that. Everybody thinks it's going to be a 4 quarter. It's already at 61%, right? So great. So we are trying to keep this edition of DesignUp Circuit rather tight, not exceeding 50 minutes to an hour with lightsaber sharp presentations. I will do a few more horrid Star Wars puns or references because we've themed it that way. So you have to seed through it at all. Do you get it? Like seed through it. So yeah, there's going to be more such horrid puns. I'm sorry. Anyway, this event is being recorded and people who could not attend can watch this later. So we've already had about 430 odd people who have registered. Apparently it went up to 600 and there was a bizarre spike at one point, but we've got lots of people. In case for some odd reason you cannot attend, you can see it later as a recording. We will get this sent to you through Twitter, and if you're a part of the mailers, you'll see it in the mailer too. YourStory is our media partner. Dr. Madan Mohan Rao, or Madan as we know him, is a part of the group. And you will also get to read a capsule of insights pretty soon from Madan right through. And there's already a couple of parts published. Please follow that. Thank you, Madan, and thank you, YourStory. Hosts and panelists, please mute your mic if it is on. I will call your name to participate. You can unmute and speak. Thank you. All participants can share, tweet, and ask questions, tagging our handle at DesignUpConf. Take screenshots or pics with your phone, showing us where you're sitting, or do a selfie with us on your screen. Generally have fun. Also, you can post your questions right here at the bottom of the screen that says Q&A. Unfortunately, we couldn't have Chewbacca with us today. There's a lovely cat of a friend of ours called Chewbacca. We thought we'll have him on the panel. We could not have him on the panel, but then you please post questions for Chewbacca. We'll probably publish the answers out as a tweet later. So get your Monday beverage or whatever is left of that bottle in your stash. Let us get it started. So Isaac Asimov, when he talks about science fiction, says, and I quote, "It is change, continuing change, inevitable change, that is the dominant factor in the society today. No sensible decision can be made any longer without taking into account not only the world as it is, but the world as it will be. This in turn means that our statesmen, our businessmen, every person must take on a science fictional way of thinking. That's absolutely a fabulous start for what we are going to talk about. Now, the rules of the game that we are going to do are like this. Every speaker gets 4 minutes, 5 minutes, and probably one question if we have time. They have to talk about 4 things. What will change in the next 4 weeks? What will change in the next 4 months? What will change in the next 4 quarters or a year? What will change in the next 4 years? We are starting with the stars Alicia from Amsterdam and ending with Anshuman from Bangalore and Yonatan from Tel Aviv. Stay tuned. Let's get our first speaker in. The Chief Experience Officer of Tindrum, coach, strategist, a deep humanist, and a great friend, Alicia Naples from Amsterdam. Hello, Alicia.
Hello, everybody. Let me get the screen share going. Is that working?
Yep.
All right, fantastic. I will waste no time. This pandemic, in addition to all of the chaos that it has caused at the global political and economic level, has caused a huge collective emergence of trauma at the personal level. All of us, I'm sure, have been afraid for our own health and for that of our loved ones. All of us are worried about what this means for the economic future and stability of our families. The worry comes in waves. Speaking personally, some days I'm completely fine and other days I'm really not. We all know on someday. We're level. And the first impression is terrifying, depressing, and overwhelming. And it's important we allow ourselves to feel these feelings as we face our own mortality. It's scary to consider that every day is uncertain, but here's the thing. That was always the case, pandemic or no. You may be surprised to find that after your fears have burned themselves out and you embrace that universal uncertainty, that there's a core of gratitude that remains, and it seems to get stronger every time that you notice it, like a plant taking in the sun and the rain. Oh, why are my controls not working? There we go. Knowing that we will die gives context to the lives we lead. Accepting our own mortality makes us care more. Our lives are limited engagements, and in this knowledge, there is a tremendous opportunity for each of us to realize that while we don't control the way that we die, we can choose the way that we want to live. There will be no going back to the way things were before, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. The way we were before was riddled with inequality, exploitation, and violence. And of course, in this moment, all of those forces are still around us. But the pandemic has given us a new lens through which to perceive and grasp the inherent injustice of the systems that we're living in. Humanity's story is one that we're all writing together. So what do you want your contribution to be? This is time to get really clear on your values, to crystallize what matters to you and what you stand for. What ideas do you want to put into the world? What are the seeds that you want to plant for the future? Not only your own future, but the future of humanity and the planet. Right now, on May the 4th, big change feels inevitable. Who would have thought that we would close our schools, our offices, our restaurants, our stadiums, our borders? Things are happening today that seemed impossible 6 months ago when I was with you guys in India. So it's time to really go for it. Think and feel outside the box. The limitations of our pre-COVID world don't necessarily apply anymore. The seeds that you planted a few months ago have sprouted and are beginning to grow. You continue to tend to them, but you're also planting more as you've realized that your actions each day are building the future world into a kinder world. And you're not alone in this. You're seeing others in your communities who are also beginning to live more consciously, more purposefully, and more fully. Change always brings new opportunities to make an impact. So pay attention and look for ways in which you can contribute. Always be ready to plant more seeds. The most hopeful thing I've seen come out of the pandemic is the fact that when presented with clear communication of what to do and why it matters, most people have been more than willing to pitch in and participate. The real learning of 2020 is that humanity is capable of working together for the good of all of us. And this is very good news because we're going to need to keep pulling together. This pandemic is the beginning of an era as well as the end of one. If you've been planting and watering your seeds, in 4 years' time, your garden will be abundant in compassion and joy and love that's creating spiritual nourishment well beyond your geographic reach. And what's more, you'll find that living your vision courageously and authentically and without a fear of death, because you know that you have lived well, has been worth every bit of it. May the 4th be with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. I have one question. So there seems to be a great tension between doing what is said to you to do, in the sense like if it comes in as like United States of America is a great question point, like it's a great case in point. The idea of the individual versus the collective, the idea of a strong individual versus a collective, where somebody really says that you have to do this and you just do it, versus why the hell should I do it? How do we address this? How do you think that should be addressed at all?
I will try to keep this short because I want to talk about this for an hour, but I know that I can't. The short version is this. I believe very strongly that each of us should do what lights us up, what brings us joy, and what makes us feel like we are giving back to the world. The tension between the individual and the group only comes into play when the individual's desires are directly in conflict with what is good for the group. So as long as what you are doing, as long as the seeds that you are planting are not taking away from somebody else's life, are not hurting somebody else, poisoning their garden or messing up their ground, then you're actually free to do what you want. As long as the choices that you're making in your life aren't negatively impacting the rest of the world, that's all that matters.
Thank you. Thanks a ton. If you can stop sharing your screen, please, Alicia. Thanks a ton. Thank you. We'll move quickly to a young design entrepreneur with apparently strong opinions in our next, which is our next speaker from Delhi, Himanshu Khanna, founder, Sparklin. He has again about 4 to 5 minutes of talk. Himanshu, can you share your screen, please, and start off? It's all yours.
Sure. I am in front of my mirror, looking at the forest fostering on my head. I can see hair, and they're abnormally long, or so I think. I don't know how to cut my hair or wash utensils, especially a tawa. It's really, really oily and dirty. I don't even know how to cook. I feel like a newborn, no kidding. No idea of how this new world is lived. The world, they say, gifted by a bat to a man. Exactly how is it done? Because I'm going to mirror everything possible, every dark, every black, every possible thing. Perhaps I'm going to call it Black Mirror. This is my first theory lesson of what we call the locked Kal Yuga. See it shining on my head, don't you? I think I have a hang of things now. Wait, I'm going to try an experiment. You know how it feels like? I'm feeling curious of who I am or have been or will be or as a person. You know what I mean, right? I want to ask you a lot, but nothing really satisfies my curiosity. I'm feeling this oozing thing inside me to try everything possible, even with my hair. Perhaps this teenage energy in me needs some direction to make me look dwarfer. And when I stop to think, the only thought I have is, what does my future say? The future has answered. Whatever I do, I'm loving it. No, I'm not McDonald's, but I could be a president. I could be a politician, but didn't I already mention the president? never mind. I could be an entrepreneur. Actually, no. I'm beyond valuations of this world. I could be a liquor seller. You know, you'd queue up to meet me so that I can see you and we both can have liquor together. It's like I'm connected to myself and something is telling me to do it. Like my command is what the universe awaits. Just do it, I hear. Just do it. I'm committed. I'm committed to a huge breakthrough. I can see it coming, young and vibing from myself and you all. I am in this incomprehensible zone now. The worst is over. The best is happening. It's a golden age, it seems. I have grown mature and enlightened and happy with what I have achieved. Wait a minute. Someone's calling me. Yeah. I hear you. Yeah. Tell me what you want. Yes. Oh, wow. I just had a harmonious dialogue with a voice, the most soothing of all, a voice I could almost picture with a circle light on the topmost hall. It's me. It's me, you all. It's me. The Satya is, I was, I am, I will be legacy. Thank you, Shiva. Shiva, I can't hear you. You're on mute.
Thank you. Thanks, Himanshu. Thank you. And let's bring up the next poll before we run up to the next speaker, please. Jay, if you can run up the poll. So the next poll is kind of simple. When will we do a road trip with family and friends to the beaches or the mountains without passes and permits? Answer options are the same: 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 quarters, 4 years. Please go ahead and answer while I start introducing the next speaker. She's got a few more minutes to kind of start off. A brave young Jedi who constantly questions. I had to bring this Jedi thing up. Sorry, I have to do this. So a brave young Jedi who constantly questions status quo. If you remember the last lightning presentation that she did in the last DesignUp, Shaheena Atharwala, design director of Zoom Car. You get 4 to 5 minutes of talk. And one question from the audience. Thank you, Shaheena. You got to unmute yourself.
Yeah, I will share my screen. I hope I share the right screen this time.
And by the way, the poll results are up there for you guys. And it looks like 4 quarters is what you're predicting.
Woo, woo, woo. I am presenting. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, go ahead.
Awesome. So first of all, salam to everyone. Salam in all different languages, but in same feeling, warmth and welcoming. I have used different languages here, languages which are not very well known: Koshur, Khasi, Sikh, and Tamil. I want to share a story about Abdul Salam. He is a 65-year-old migrant laborer from Uttar Pradesh who migrated to the city of Bombay when his sugar factory where he was working was shut down by the government. He then started selling footwear door to door, and it did not help sustain his family. So in search of a better opportunity, he migrated to Bombay with his family. Today, he lives in a slum where he finds shelter, and many like him find shelter as well. He works as an office boy, a 65-year-old office boy, doing odd jobs in a shop which sells music consoles. Due to the lockdown, the shop is shut. With no inflow of income right now, he has to pay rent and he has to sustain his family somehow. Today, they regret moving to the city, and now they just want to go back. But how? They feel that life seemed better before, in a spacious house, in UP, in village, where they could see the sky, the trees, as opposed to the matchbox life in the slum today. In the next 4 weeks, what happens? Well, 2 weeks back, a death occurred in his neighborhood due to COVID. Now the entire area is a containment zone. With social distancing a luxury in these densely populated slums, And every day, the number of positive cases coming out from the slums of Bombay is increasing. There is really no clarity as to what will happen next. What happens if they catch the disease? They don't even have insurance or any idea what to do if they really test positive, where to go. Anecdotal evidence suggests that there is not enough testing being done, especially people belonging to this particular community. Either way, he is stuck now with until interstate transport starts, there is no way he can go back home. And chances of lockdown being lifted from these areas, which are containment zones, is really very thin compared to other areas. But Abdul is hopeful to start working as soon as lockdown lifts. That's if his services are really needed in the shop. That's if the shop is still functional. In a scenario where salaries are being cut, people are being laid off, businesses are down, will his services really be required if the business is not rolling well? He does not see a future, and he actually wishes to go back. He has not even received any pay yet. Although the government has started special trains to ferry stranded workers back to their home, but with surcharge over and above the regular price. Slow claps for that. So how is Abdul going to pay this with zero income now? He can't just walk hundreds of kilometers with his wife and an 8-year-old grandchild like other thousands of laborers across the country are doing. Children are dying out of hunger and dehydration while walking back these hundreds of kilometers in scorching heat. It's devastating to watch this. The situation gets even more complex when women and child labor do this. And they are the most affected ones and the most vulnerable ones of this entire lot. Incidents of lynching and communal violence holds Abdul back to take any step that might put him or his family in a vulnerable spot. It's a great disadvantage today belonging to a different religious group and being poor, of course. However, hopeful of going back home, he has filled a state mandatory form, registration form, and he's awaiting his return. That when will happen? Hope is all he has for the next 4 weeks. What happens to Abdul in the next 4 months? Abdul will definitely go back to his village. Empty-handed, broken, and hopeless? We don't know. But they will at least have a roof over their heads once they reach there, if they do. One-time food, maybe safety and peace is all they look forward to right now. With no employment opportunities in the village too, he might just resort to farming what he was originally doing with his family, or maybe look back to selling shoes door to door. We don't know. He will try to figure his life out later on. What happens in the next 4 quarters to him? Abdul will try to build his life again, maybe with farming, maybe with nothing. There was a reason, he initially shifted to Bombay, leaving his grand, open, green village. It was for employment, the employment opportunity. Lack of employment opportunities in the rural side is one of the main reasons why women, men, and children, these labor forces, they flock to the cities. Children under the age are forced into child labor. That's due to lack of employment opportunities and proper reforms for children. But maybe once the economic activities start back in the city, he would want to come back. But with no proper employment reforms from the authorities and no opportunities, Abdul and many like him would definitely want to migrate back. But will the city be ready back to have them? Will our social setup be so robust to create an inclusive society for them? Will we have overcome our own biases and outlook towards this section? With the current state of apathy and arbitrary execution of policies, this seems highly unlikely. What happens in the next 4 years? Let's have a look. Migrant laborers are the backbone of any city in the world, especially the ones which are called the financial capital of any country. India is no exception, and the cities will need the laborers back. Return of Abdul and many more like him depends on various variables, age, health, and employment status. He might have grown to 70 years. He might not want to come back, or he might just want to come back. What if laborers develop illnesses and they can't come back? They can't sustain themselves. If there are no reforms in opportunities and employment, we don't know what happens to them. Many laborers who migrate back will resort to farming again, but farmers are grappling climate change variables. This year is supposedly the most hottest year, and farmers are worried about unpredictable inclement of weather. For example, Karnataka rains recently, they've ruined crops, similar in Punjab and Uttar Pradesh. So if the crops are good, they might just want to stay back, because this particular incident of COVID and the pain that it has put these laborers through, they'll think twice before coming back. But if their crops have not been good and they've not been able to discover any opportunity there, they definitely will be desperate to come back. And how desperate they are for survival is definitely going to be a strong determinant for them to come back to the city they once left. Policy reforms for universal basic income might come into place. I hope they do, which will put a safety net for these vulnerable classes. At least it'll help them move forward in life in scenarios like COVID. Compassionate and empathetic policies from the government side and the society side will help bring this unorganized sectors of labor to work them in kinder conditions. For example, insurance might be a good policy for them, especially now when they don't know what to do in medical emergencies. This will help create an ecosystem where the unskilled labor can come back to the city and live with dignity and sense of safety. One of the great examples is that today the middle class feels that we're providing them lunch and dinner. They should be thankful and happy. Let me bring this to your notice that the laborers in the city are not here for charity. They're here to earn a dignified living, and that's what they want to reclaim back. Women, child, and minorities. The situation gets complicated if it's a woman. The safety net and policies will definitely determine their return back to the workforce. Safety is a huge factor for women, child labor class, and minorities. The cases of caste-based and gender violence is definitely increasing in the society in these recent times. And people will put safety first more than anything. And these kind of inhibitions will further marginalize these vulnerable people in our society. In 4 years' time, today the employment rate is at its lowest. If in the 4 years' time, the government does not come up with sustainable employment reforms, which are designed to help them become an inclusive part of the society, crime rate will definitely increase in proportion to the civil unrest in our society. So who is Abdul? Abdul is 65-year-old and he is my maternal uncle, but there are many more like him. I would like to thank you with the same warmth and same welcoming feeling in different languages which are unknown. Ramadan Kareem to everyone in DesignUp, and thank you for listening to me.
Thanks, Tan. Thank you, Shaheena. I cannot ask you any question, though I have a question because we are run out of time, but we will talk about this surely later. Thank you. Thanks, Tan. Next up is, you got to unshare your screen. And next up is our own Ba, who fights the dark side of financial services during the day, and in the night he works for DesignUp, which is a good place to be in. He's been an intrinsic part of our team, and he's up here. Again, gets 4 to 5 minutes and probably a couple of questions after that. Can the audience add more questions which are relevant to the talks, please? I'll be very happy to see some questions that are relevant to the talk that will help me ask them the right question too. Thank you.
Shiva, are you able to hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Okay. So most of the talks were very self-reflective, but my talk is going to be a little different from, it's almost like a prediction. Take it with a pinch of salt. These are something based on the patterns that I have observed. And I'm going to take a very positive side on how this particular health crisis is going to bring up a lot of change in terms of financial inclusion. Okay. Right. So this particular flow that you see is essentially the financial journey of people. This is something I will start with how you could relate with. So we would have all started with opening a bank account, and we would start making payments into it, which is essentially the money in and the money outflow. You would have a bunch of payment instruments, which is your debit card, credit card, or UPI, which is used to withdraw the money from the bank account. When you have excess money, you move the money into some sort of an investments. This could be anything between mutual funds, stocks, FD, RD, etc. Whenever you have an additional source, whenever you need an additional money, a bulk of money is when you go for credit, which is nothing but essentially loans. So these loans are essentially, you could purchase it for car loan, home loan, if you want to start a business, etc., etc. Now, the last product, which is insurance. Insurance is the most difficult product that you could sell in the among the financial products, because you are kind of assuming that something wrong could happen in your life, and so that you're protecting against it. It's very difficult to explain this to people and make them pay upfront. So when you buy an insurance, there is the first time you have a contact with you and the agent is when you're buying the insurance. Then probably you would actually redeem the product only if there is something unfortunate that happens. This is most of the time the flow for most of us, people in the upper class of the society. We all fall under the top 1% or the 0.1% of this country, right? This does not hold true for most of the people from the LMI segment. So when you talk about LMI segment, as a low and marginal income segment. Think of their household income somewhere between 10,000 rupees to 15,000 rupees, right? I'll tell you what is the challenge there and why we as a country kind of remain poor, right? One, when it comes to bank account, it's very difficult to open a bank account. Even when they open a bank account, their bank account is not used the same way how we use the bank account. They use a bank account just to receive the money and withdraw the money from it. A typical behavior is where a household goes and withdraws a money of 5,000 or 10,000 per month and keeps it at their home, and they start paying everyone in cash, right? Second, when it comes to investment, since they don't have additional payment instruments, like which is essentially a lack of your mobile phones or lack of knowledge of how to use UPI or lack of knowledge of, they're not given credit cards, they use everything in cash. So for them, saving the money becomes investments. That's the difference. So in investment, the money grows. Saving is where you save the capital, right? Now, since they don't have any of the credit history before, or they do not have credit cards, they don't build a credit score, right? This is essentially why they sought to money lenders when it comes to the urgent need of money. So to give you an example why money lenders are bad, when you walk into a bank account, you get interest rate of almost 13% per annum. They almost pay anywhere between 5% per month, right? So if you're a daily cart vendor, morning, the money lender comes to you, gives you 100 rupees, and in the evening, he collects back 105. That 5 rupees might seem like a small amount, but it almost accounts to 5%. Now you could do the calculation for an entire year, right? Now, one of the things that the country was hoping to do was to enable a lot more digital ways of these activities, and so that you could build a digital trail, and that would eventually help you get credit, right? So if you start using UPI, and if you start paying your electricity bill, if you start paying your TV bill, gas connection bill, or if you start repaying the loans that you've probably gotten from the bank, then you're creating a digital trail. Now the digital trail can be used to evaluate an individual's good behavior, right? People who have good behavior can be given credit. So you don't start with something like a lakh rupee, but probably you start with something small, right? And once they start repaying it, your credit the eligibility for credit kind of increases. But the timeline in which we were thinking is going to fasten because of this current COVID, and I'll tell you how. So the new financial journey looks something like this, right? It's a bit of messy here, but I'm going to take you guys in detail. What is it going to look like 4 weeks from now? Because of the social distancing, people who have actually gotten loans before, either through microfinance institutions or people who are wanting to do bill payments, which is your electricity bill payment or your DTH bill payment, or it could be any other sorts of like newspaper, whatever it is, they have to resort to digital mechanisms, right? Now, what does this mean is earlier, so today we have almost around 450 million smartphone users, right? So think of smartphone users. You don't need a billion smartphone users to make all of these happen. You need smartphone users per household, right? So which essentially, if I extrapolate it, even though I don't know the number of households on this thing, you could have smartphones per one, at least a smartphone per home, or at least per community, right? Now, when you start building, when you start making all of these repayments and the bill payments digitally, now you have an incentive to learn to do this digitally, right? Earlier, you did not have an incentive to learn to make all of these payments digitally because there was an even more convenient method of doing it, which is actually paying cash. So essentially, if you were from a 3-tier city, there would be an agent who would visit your home to collect your electricity bill, or you would go and pay the electricity bill over the counter, or for your bill payments like your cable TV, there will be an agent who will come to your home to collect the bill payments. Now, when most of that just stopped, you're forced to move digital, which means you're forced to learn it, right? Now, there is no more excuses, right? Second, what is it going to look 4 months from now? Insurance, right? Earlier, we were thinking about saying that, what is going to happen to me? And that is when you had this lack or the negligence probably to not have insurance. Yes, insurance has a lot of other associated problems with it. One being an insurance demands you to actually pay on a periodical cycle to keep it alive, which essentially means every 3 months you'll have to pay, or every month you'll have to pay. But most of the India does not get income on a regular basis. Their income is depending on multiple factors. It could be based on the labor and based on the monsoon, etc. Right? But now the fact that we are faced with a pandemic, and that means that human beings are generally short-sighted, right? Now that you're faced with something, then you know the possibility of something occurring like this is high. And that essentially pushes you to start making better plans, and there would be a lot of insurance uptake in the market. Now, this is not only, this will also have to be coupled with the newer players actually building new sorts of insurance product, which does not demand you to pay on a regular cycle. And also it should actually do it in a micro scale or a sachet sized insurance, which essentially accommodates every class and the people from all the economic backgrounds. The third one, right? People are not going to go for any sorts of investments, which is essentially could be mutual funds or stock market, but rather they would try to save their capital, right? So this is going to be 4 quarters from now, you would see a lot of uptick in RDs and FDs as opposed to putting it in mutual funds and stock markets, right? Now, this could also mean that, now that people are starting to use digital payment mechanisms, now they don't have the necessity to actually go and withdraw the cash, right? Withdraw the cash also means that, you'll have to stand in the bank and you'll have to maintain social distancing. That is going to be difficult. Now, when you have extra money is when the banking system can start pushing you towards having the other sort of savings instrument like FD or RD, telling them the benefits of what it could do, right? The 4 years from now, what you would actually be achieving is, now, since most of the other products you have kind of gotten through them on a digital manner, you are fully eligible for digital credit, right? Now, even if it's a farmer, even if it's somebody who is running a small scale grocery store, he or she would have at least some sort of a digital trail for them to be evaluated and given credit from a formal financial institution as opposed to going to a money lender, right? This is what I think is going to be a change in the society. Most of these would be coupled with a lot of the digital infrastructure or the public good from the government. And I think we are fortunate, or you could call it lucky, that most of your digital infrastructures are already in place. It could be something from UPI, it could be Jan Dhan accounts, or it could be the account aggregators, which are currently in making. We didn't expect this, but this situation will actually help us in the increasing adoption of rest of it, right? So that's what I wanted to say.
Thanks, Dharmesh. Thank you. Dharmesh, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Do you think there will be less possibilities of being exploited with digital credit?
There will be actually a lot more exploitation that will happen. And that is essentially what I and the community should be fighting for is to say always there'll be organizations who will be taking advantage of this. And I think there should be a parallel movement that should happen around financial literacy. Right.
Right. Because
So,
right now, I believe that corporations have stopped swindling the layers above and slowly actually going to the stratas lower to swindle the stratas lower. It's unfortunate, but that's what is happening. So I think you guys are the warriors who are fighting against this. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Atan. I think it was a pretty enlightening talk. I think it's time to get the next poll up. Jay, if you can help me with the poll, please. The next question is interesting. When can we hug or shake hands like courteous and loving humans? 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 quarters, 4 years. Go ahead and answer the questions and let's see what the stuff is going to be. Let's take about 20 minutes to answer the questions, please. And
20 seconds you meant?
20 seconds, sorry, not 20 minutes. We've got to be done in 20 minutes. And then now we have more girl power with Fatima Raja. Before that, let me actually quickly give you a thing of, so everybody believes in 4 quarters we'll be able to hug each other. I wish I will be able to shake hands and hug people in 4 quarters. That'll be absolutely brilliant. Let's get Fatima Raja, UX lead at Gojek Bangalore. The stage is all yours, Fatima.
All right, thank you, Shiva. Let me know if you can see my screen.
I can. You're good to go.
Okay. Is it presenting the presenter screen?
Yes. Yes, it is.
All right. Awesome. All right. Hi, everyone. I am going to be talking on travel and tourism. This is, again, my personal take on how this is going to change in the next coming 4 months, quarters, weeks, and years. There is no sugarcoating that tourism has taken a free fall since the COVID-19 pandemic has hit the world. It has been on its knees and it's only been going down. From all the closed borders of the world and travel bans, the only thing that seems to be traveling is the virus itself. This topic is rather close to me. Being an avid traveler, I am at the receiving end of it. Apart from all the cooking photographs, I have recently been seeing all my friends and everyone on my Instagram feed posting travel throwback photos, which really only goes to show me that the urge of travel has not gone away and has only been increasing. Tourism will definitely make a comeback. This goes to show that people are eagerly waiting for the lockdown and the pandemic to settle down for them to go back again to the beach, to the mountains, and to the sea. But the travel and tourism will come back only in stages. So how would it look in the next 4 weeks? Well, it would look just exactly the same. Your favorite destination will still be your home and your bedroom and your kitchen. Because I haven't really stocked up very well, I do take weekend trips to go buy groceries. And oh, the joy of doing that is exactly how much I enjoyed packing my bags up for summer and going on a holiday with my girlfriends, which obviously didn't happen this year, unfortunately. So we all got online and tried to do all the virtual experiences. I think a lot of people around the world, till the time the lockdown goes down, will be doing these virtual experiences. I encourage. It's a good break from all your mundane tasks. It's a good way of getting to know new people. For me, travel was all about not just physically going from one place to the other, but discovering new things, discovering new people, discovering new experiences. And that's exactly what we did. We got on a virtual experience and we met new people, we heard some music, and I finished that last bottle of wine. That was just a bummer because now I'm out of alcohol. But this goes to say that till the lockdown continues, people will still be dwelling in virtual experiences and probably even after that. But this is not going to substitute your actual urge to travel or your actual way of traveling. In the next 4 months, when the lockdown will go down, what I will be doing is exactly this. This is going to be me running outside my house, wanting to do anything but cooking or cleaning. But I will be doing this in stages. I will test the waters slowly. The road trips are definitely going to make a comeback. I'm already thinking of investing in a car. So people in the audience, if you all have any suggestion of a good affordable car, please do let them in. I'm going to be extremely wary, and I think a lot of people too, of the rentals. They're not going to be sure about the sanitization. They will need high sanitization and security assurances to even be able to rent a car. So I think people's basic definition of fundamental definition of assets buying is also going to change in the coming days. People are going to keep these trips very short and close to home. For we don't know which Sunday morning will PM Modi announce another lockdown and you might want to run back home. So this is what I'll be doing once the lockdown is over, already planning on a trip to Kurg with my friends, keeping them just about three to four group of people. In the next 4 quarters too, in the next another year, I don't see myself crossing the international borders at all. I actually know a lot of people, a lot of my friends who are stuck somewhere, who've gone there for holidays or business trips and are unable to come back home. There is a pent up demand for these people to reach home. So I think even when the airlines sort of start, there will be a sudden peak because people will be returning back home, but then there will be a sudden dip in the curve. Because of these very reasons, I will still be in India, into the borders, and discovering the most incredible India that there is. Another reason that I will not be traveling internationally is because probably the countries won't allow me either. There is not another year, I don't see a lot of international travel happening. A lot of us are going to be inside the borders and trying to travel to all the secluded locations that there is. I recently, with a few of my friends, ran a poll on Instagram to see where do people would like to travel the most once the pandemic is over. And I think most of them chose somewhere in the mountains, in the forest, or close to the sea, which means the big cities and tourist attractions are not going to be the first choice. Obscure traveling is going to take a different peak, and our perspective on travel is essentially going to change. We might travel only for a defined purpose, to take a break, to take a rest, or for a shorter interval of time. Being at Gojek, we travel to Indonesia every other month. But I think, I'm not sure in a good way or bad, but the pandemic has given us a crash course in remote working. I don't see business traveling picking up anytime soon. I think it will only be going down and be substituted by more valuable and meaningful travel. I won't be packing my bag anymore and just booking the tickets. I will be planning a lot more. No more YOLO for me. I'm going to be thinking where to stay, what to eat, who am I going with, and etc. etc. I think hospitality will have to also increase their standard of sanitization and services. This might make luxury more affordable, but flights are not going to get cheap at all because of the limited supply. However, so I think people are still going to be wary of traveling. However, in the next 4 years, I do expect travel to boom in the way that we had never seen before. Maybe it will hit industry standards. It will more like be 2019 on steroids, people just going out everywhere. But the face of travel will definitely change. What we thought was expectations versus reality now will actually be reality. And the government will have to do this. They will have to introduce new travel policies and reintroduce them if they want to attract tourism more and more, especially the countries that are dependent on tourism for their economy. Not just the places of destination. I think even the way we commute will essentially have to change and will change. Airlines will be redesigned. Aircrafts will be redesigned. The way we work at airports will be redesigned. There'll be fewer people, more social distancing, way more sanitization and security. And I guess along with your passports, you will also be carrying a vaccination certificate with yourself, which also I think will become a mandate. For someone like me who likes to scuba dive, I think I will have to buy my own gear, which are not cheap. So all this together is going to make travel definitely safer in the long run, but it's going to take a longer time to travel, and it is definitely not going to be cheap. So yes, in the coming years, Wanderlust is not going to be cheap. Personal finances will be battered. Along with safety, affordability will become a key component in how people will start traveling again and how soon. But the truth is, people will always want a vacation and people will always want to travel. It's just going to take us a while to find our footing and soothe our anxiety once we are given the green light. Until then, stay home and stay safe. That's from me.
Thank you. Thanks a ton, Fatima. There is probably one question which has come up in the Q&A. We can twist it to your context, I think. So the question says, would social distancing and people hesitating to go, I would say travel, be in the public, would it pave way to virtual and augmented reality more? Which is an interesting question. You want to take
Yes. Yes, definitely. So yes, I have been thinking about this when I was thinking about the 4 years travel, right? But for me, being at the receiver end of traveling, being in a pod, even wearing that glass, giving me the best experience. I think for me to pack my bags, get on a plane and get to a place Nothing is ideally going to replace that experience for me. However, yes, maybe those experiences will come in a different way of entertainment, but not as a replacement for travel itself. So that would be my take on we are essentially not replacing travel as a whole.
Thank you.
Thank
I
you.
think we are going to go back to one of our own kin. Nikita Sarkar is a UX researcher at Google in Delhi, passionate about the future of education. And she is also a key member of the DesignUp team, or I would call it the Jedi High Council. Our inside joke has been Ab ki bar Nikita Sarkar. Let's welcome Nikita Sarkar, please.
Thank you, Shiva. Can you see my screen?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
Okay, great. So today I also have a story to share with all of you. So before I do that, I have a small little disclaimer that what I'm going to share is a culmination from field research because I research with children who belong to the lower SEC category. It's about a story of a boy, 8-year-old boy named Nabil, who currently resides in Delhi. He, along with his family, moved from a very small village in Bengal in search of better opportunities. I would like all of you to travel back in time 40 weeks just to understand a little bit of context of who Nabil is. His mother is a domestic helper who works in about four to six houses every day, and his father actually sells confectionaries in a pushcart. Well, I don't want you to sympathize with their profession. They really like their job. But you know what the problem is? When they go to work, they don't know where to leave him and go. They certainly didn't want to leave him unattended at home because the neighborhood is unsafe, even for boys. So luckily, they found an NGO school. It was nearby their place, and most importantly, the education was free. It made them really happy that they could send him to school because they didn't have the money to invest in his education. And most importantly, it was a safe, secured, and supervised space that looks after him while they went out to make ends meet. Nabil's life has been very nomadic, and this has taken a toll in his education life, thus lacking age-appropriate cognitive skills for an 8-year-old, and hence he was enrolled in like grade 1. You know what his favorite hobbies are? It's making TikTok videos, lots of them, and watch tons of cartoon on YouTube. His mother's phone has become a vessel for Nabil to sail into the seas of social media. But apart from this, he also loves playing with street dogs around his home. Let's fast forward to the present. What is he doing now? His school shut down in March due to the pandemic. He's at home like all of us, but he's making a lot more TikTok videos, but this time his parents also featured in it. If only his mother also received a formal education, she could have used this opportunity to homeschool him. But unfortunately, she's not even aware of Nabil's capabilities and skills, let alone engaging him in activities to improve and shine. So how's his life going to change in the next 4 weeks? Well, rice and dal is a staple in all Indian households, including Nabil's. Due to the absence of income, the dal has now been replaced by water and a pinch of iodized salt. But while his social media presence increases, Nabil really misses school. He misses those dog-eared storybooks in his library and playing catch-catch with his friends. Personally, I wish his school could conduct online virtual classes like how the private schools are currently doing it. But again, that's a privilege. How's his life going to change in 4 months? Well, unfortunately, I would say it won't significantly. The school he attends runs on donation and hence it's free. As an individual, we are all living in fear of going from paycheck to paycheck, and I'm sure so are the donors. Which means it's bad news for children like Nabil because no donation means no school. The storybooks will have to wait, perhaps forever. But maybe on the bright side, his parents might start going back to work. I'm saying maybe. To support the family with another source of income, Nabil will probably be nudged into entering menial workforce, probably child labor. How's it going to be in 4 quarters? Well, if all goes well, donations may start seeping in, which will lead to the school reopening. But the question is, will Nabil's parents forego that extra income Nabil has been putting on the table and send him back to his school bench? So how's it going to be in 4 years then? Nabil might have seen more parts of India than any of us in the next 4 years on account of his father hunting for a job. You might all wonder that Nabil's life has been so nomadic and this pandemic hasn't really changed too much for his educational life. Well, let me tell you, if Nabil would have given his final exam, he would have been promoted to grade 3. He has been doing exceptionally well to match kids of his own age, and his parents began to realize that. This was the first time in his life he was in a school for over a year. Research is predicting that things won't go back to normal like before after this pandemic. How can we leverage the apps that these children already use to continue learning? Maybe perhaps platforms like TikTok or WhatsApp can collaborate with educational boards like ICSE or CBSE or Open School to make content free available and certify them. Perhaps leverage features of apps like WhatsApp and connect educators over video so that they can ask questions and learn. Use the apps that children are familiar with. According to the social inclusion of migrants in India, a UNESCO report cited that India is estimated to have 15 million migrant kids. Can we imagine a future for these children where they don't have to be physically present in a school to be called educated, considering their migrant lives? Can every child without a PIN code find one inbox that invests in their future? Nabil is currently keeping himself occupied in a world of social media, not knowing whether he's ever going back to school. Hey, but did I forget to mention, when Nabil grows up, he wants to actually become an animal doctor in his own words. And it's not because of his family condition, but it's because there was this one particular dog that he saw dying in his locality and he just couldn't do anything about it. When Nabil was just settling in at school, the virus put a full stop on his learning. Given this, will he ever be able to become an animal doctor? Will Nabil ever get the chance to help a sick dog get better? Thank you.
Thanks, Nikita. Thank you. That was a great talk. I have a question for you.
Yes.
What can individuals like you and I do to get this better? I mean, we are privileged class. We don't care about these kind of things. How can we actually be compassionate about this kind of stuff and in some way contribute instead of saying the government hasn't done a thing?
I feel like, I've been thinking about it, and I have a slum area sort near my place, and I feel like currently in this situation, we have a lot of time in hand to be able to, nudge these children around us if we get that opportunity, or support organizations who do it. Take some time out on weekends, I think the most important thing is going and emphasizing on the importance of education. Because of the nomadic life that these children have, sometimes they lose focus of it. I feel like we should be able to, if we can find a space where we see children, to go and just strike a conversation with them, or partner up with NGOs where we can at least emphasize and tell them that what the possibilities of education can be.
Yeah. Like a couple of places where sorry to interject, but a couple of places that I've seen this thing work. Like I remember last time when Jack Morgan's presentation happened, he was actually talking about the power of knowing a language and how that kind of empowers people in one way. And I've kind of come to learn that like education is a little more structured, and learning is something that people, especially children of that age, can get more easily than education per se. So probably I think all of us have got to focus more on giving them learning rather than pushing them into education. Not that you and I love school.
Because the problem that I have noticed when I've gone on field is the schools that they all engage in push children to actually rote learn.
Right.
And hence they don't understand what they're learning, and after the exam is over they just forget. They don't know how to apply those concepts that they learn. So I think as you mentioned, like we have to find ways on how to help them build a better understanding, like with their reading skills or with their other cognitive skills, help them improve that.
Thank you. Thanks a ton, Nikita. I think it's time for the last poll to be up. Jay, if you can help me with that poll. The question is, kind of from Fatima's presentation, when can we fly to another country without a worry? 4 weeks, 4 months, 4 quarters, 4 years. Let's see how this works out. Couple of things that I want to tell the panelists. I think there's a bunch of questions in Q&A. If you think anything that is relevant for you guys, please go ahead and answer while the other presenters are presenting. Take a couple of minutes to kind of look at it. There is a bunch of them for Dharmesh. He seems to be very popular today. There are a lot of questions about what do you think of the financial future of this country. So it looks like in 4 quarters is when we can fly. 47% think 4 quarters, and in a way it's kind of split close between in 4 years, which is 45%. So there is 2% off, and I will actually vote for 45%. Unfortunately, panelists cannot vote, but I would say 4 years. I don't think before that we'll be very happy with traveling safe. Next we have Anshuman Bapna, founder of Terra.do. It's an online climate school. I was intrigued by that business. It's an online climate school. He's joining us from Bangalore. 4 to 5 minutes again, and we'll probably have one question from the audience. Keep your questions sharp. And thank you, Anshuman. Let's start.
Thank you, Shiva. Let me just share my screen. I hope everything is visible. Okay, so let's get started. So I know we are all in Star Wars mode, but let me start talking about my favorite sci-fi movie of all time, which is this movie called Solaris. Not the one, the atrocity that was made in the 21st century, but the one that was made in the 20th century by this Russian director called Tarkovsky. And well, the plot's evil villain is actually the sun around which the space station revolves. And that sun, what it does is that it amplifies the deepest, most desperate desires of anyone who looks into it. So to me, it feels like that COVID is like Solaris. It takes our deepest hopes and the most morbid fears that we have and projects them out into the world. While predicting the future is always foolish, and this is, I think, a spectacularly bad time to do so. So think of this exercise as me telling you what I see when I peer into the heart of Solaris. Very first thing, I hope some of you guys are familiar with this famous, or rather the infamous trolley problem. I think what's going to happen is that as the mounting cost to the economy becomes clear, governments across the world will need to weigh the cost of a human life as they open up the economy. But as this cartoon subtly shows, I hope you can see what's happening here, which is that the choices are dismal for any philosopher of this problem, which is willingness to open up the economy faster at the expense of lives will eventually circle back to have a tragic effect on the economy, and vice versa. So this is what's right here and now in our present future. This is truly a Hobbesian choice, and I think he's a man I would return to again in just a bit. Okay, what's going to happen in 4 months? This is the dead cat bounce. Okay, now we haven't seen an economic shock of this scale for the past 100 years. Both supply and demand have fallen off a cliff across much of the world. But we haven't seen such a massive imposition on people's liberties across the globe either. So when you combine the two, what comes out? I feel that as things start opening up, you will see a rebound. You will see a rebound in the stock markets, since everyone wants to desperately believe that the worst is behind us or soon will be. It's not. You will see travel bounce back with a vengeance, as Fatima said, but only temporarily, until the reality of green zones and COVID passports hits you. And you'll see debauchery of all kinds shoot up. I don't know if you guys saw on Twitter, the trending topic today was the lines outside alcohol shops, and rightly so. But not just alcohol, but many other things. So these are all, in my opinion, temporary dead cat bounces. These are not the real thing. So don't let them fool you. And so for heaven's sake, please don't bet your life savings on them, please. And you know what the worst possible dead cat bounce is? The inevitable second wave of COVID that's due to hit as winter comes around, which leads me to the next one. Okay, 4 quarters out, a year out. So this is this beautiful concept of the elite panic. Now, this pandemic has, what it has done across the world, not just India, not just US, but everywhere, It has laid bare all the fault lines in our unequal world, our income inequalities, our raw pillaging of this planet, and frankly, our unsustainable lives. And as the global economy sputters back to life and the scale of economic devastation becomes clear, these fault lines will just crack open. We'll see explosions of social unrest across the world, from the banlieues of Paris to the migrant workers of Surat. And this will, by the way, then become the perfect pretext for the panic of the elites. And that's, by the way, us on this call, right? The elites will work the corridors of power to snatch any stimulus money that comes across. They'll support drone policing, COVID passports, and ghettos that would keep the masses in their place. And honestly, I don't think you need to look too far. I mean, just check your own apartment complex today when Bangalore is opening up to see the kind of rules they apply to workers, maids who come from the outside, and what kind of rules apply to you. And yet, there is hope that the rest of us will realize the fundamental truth of COVID, right? Our fates, that the fact that our fates across the planet are inextricably connected. You'll have the elites disinfecting migrant workers, but you'll also have these masses of people coming online to figure out a way to help these migrant workers through direct cash transfers, building out services for them on the fly. People will show resilient behaviors like organizing into emergent groups. I think a lot of you might have seen the COVID work that started happening online. A bunch of communities sprang up, hackathons sprang up, and not just in the tech community, but in the medical community, in the science community, and so on. And that's the thing that gives me a lot of hope. And I feel that these groups will use the newly familiar digital technologies to create crowdsourced answers to questions that we have traditionally looked for governments to solve. Things like building safety nets, economic safety nets for others, cleaning up our local neighborhoods, or doing citizen journalism, and so on. And these groups will use the internet to start linking across the planet. They will start sharing lessons, products seamlessly. And this is, by the way, one of the things that I'm trying to build at my company, Terra.do, which is basically an online school for climate change, as Shiva mentioned. But soon, these resilient masses will face an even more formidable foe. Could be a friend, but potentially a foe in 4 years. The Leviathan. Now, 400 years ago, our friend Hobbes, who I mentioned earlier, wrote the Leviathan. And Hobbes wrote that the war of all against all could only be avoided by a strong, undivided government. That is, by the Leviathan. Now, COVID response has required war-like mobilization across the planet. I mean, think of it like World War III. Only states have such massive capacity, and that will create the rise of governments again as central to our lives, and not just in socialist countries, but in capitalist countries as well. Think of the multi-trillion-dollar stimulus in response to the crisis. I mean, it's a thing of fearsome beauty that suddenly out of thin air, $2 trillion could appear magically in the US economy, by the way, which is exactly the amount of money that the climate folks have been asking for over 10 years to solve the climate crisis for the entire planet. But there it is. Now, over the next few years, we'll start to appreciate how important and how powerful an activist state can be. But don't get fooled. A state's fundamental DNA is to accumulate power. This means there's a fork in the road ahead for us. One path will lead to isolationist states that cut themselves off from the world and erode the civil liberties of their citizens in the name of security. They will take this chance to sabotage hard-won civil and environmental rights. But there's another path, and that path leads to states expanding their roles to provide things like free universal healthcare, even universal basic income, God forbid, right? I mean, after all, America invented Social Security after the Great Depression. Now, both types of states will prioritize the revival of the economy, but only one of them will use this crisis as an opportunity to rebuild in a way that is inclusive and build it in a resilient way that prepares us for the mother of all COVIDs hurtling towards us, which is climate change. And the difference between the two would be the quality of ideas on how we progress. So please keep generating ideas. The difference would be the political leadership willing to run with them. So please keep voting and stand for elections. And the final difference would be citizens who will hold this Leviathan accountable. Now, I know we had, the brief was only up to 4 years, but being the A+ student I always aspired to be, I did one more thing, which was 14 years. Well, 40 was too far out, but I fundamentally believe that COVID was the bullet and climate was the trigger, right? And we all kind of seen how the devastation of forests led to what these zoonotic diseases have become fairly common now. So that's my bonus prediction is this, which is that I think strong national governments combined with collective action from their populations will ultimately win the day. Our COVID response will show that bold action is not only possible, but it is a politically winning strategy. This newfound self-belief will revive the national projects of many countries, like the American dream, the Indian dream, the Chinese dream, and what have you. And that elusive political will for fixing the planet will come back. My hope and my belief is that 2030 will actually feel like what 1950 must have felt like in America, a future of endless possibilities. And our children, or my children, I'm hoping you guys are younger, will look back at 2020 as a year when it all changed. Now, I know that this is kind of this is the Star Wars theme that we are all at, and therefore let me bring it back, the evening back to our Star Wars theme. As luck would have it, episode 4 of Star Wars is called A New Hope, and that's my message to you: A New Hope. May the 4th be with you.
Thank you. Thanks, Anshuman. I think that was an unbelievably great talk. I've got 2 questions. Alicia looks like she'll probably have a question. Alicia, do you have a question? No. Okay. I have 2 questions. First question is this. You said there are 2 types of states, and you actually talked about the 2 types of potential states that can, states, I'm talking about countries, civilization, or communities, whatever the stuff is. I think we have a certain amount of smartness to judge what governments today will become what kind of states in the future. Do you have any clue on that? And I know I'm pushing it, but let's. Do you have any?
No, I'll tell you what. See, the cross currents of history are not in our favor right now. Francis Fukuyama said maybe 30 years ago that we were in the post-liberalism stage. History was dead, and now all that mattered was that we would take the liberal democracy model and just propagate it across the entire world. Now it turns out liberal democracy is in a retreat in the bastions of liberal democracy, right? Including our own country, including the US and so on. And of course, leave alone what's happening in other parts of the world. So to me, it feels like the government as a Leviathan, which is actually now trying to usurp more and more power, is entirely the direction that we are going in. But what I also see, and to me, maybe I'm just kind of inordinately hopeful given what I saw in the post-COVID response, which was this coming together of civil society in a way that finally not just recreated the bonds between civilians, but the amount of collaboration that was happening between well-meaning government officials and the civic society was just phenomenal. And to me, it feels like that is one of the strengths of our country and of these liberal democracies in general. And I am really hopeful that that combined with the internet and the fact that now internet is like this common good, not entirely in the hands of 7 billion people, but getting there very, very fast, especially post-COVID, means that we would have this unstoppable force against the impossible object against an unstoppable force. And I'm an entrepreneur. I'm an optimist. That's the only way you can actually do something for climate change, and that's how I feel.
Thank you. Thanks a ton. I think we've got to skip the second question. I'll probably call you and ask the question in person.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let us welcome our next presenter all the way from Tel Aviv, Israel, Yonatan Levy, VP Product at The Floor. You get 4 to 5 minutes and probably 1 question from the audience or me. Thank you, Yonatan, and the floor is all yours.
Great. Thank you so much. And hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be here and to have the opportunity to connect with everyone. I think it's not for granted that we're able to sit in our homes and connect in this way, having such a power broadcasting station to get across the globe. So one of the things that I've been dealing with lately a lot is hiring designers and UX professionals remotely. And I couldn't help thinking about the new skills and challenges that it requires. Also as the interviewer, but also from the candidate's side. And I thought that this is a great opportunity to share with you some of my thoughts around this topic, how hiring remotely and getting interviewed through video requires new skills from us in the upcoming future as designers, as UX people, and as product professionals. So one of the first things that we're already seeing is that, as strange as it might seem, our lighting and background and posture and the way we even sound in our microphone might affect our suitability for our role. And this is pretty absurd because you might have 15 years of experience and won awards with your designs, but the wrong lighting and the wrong microphone can actually affect your chances to nail the job interview. And I think I've actually seen some very talented people getting interviewed and had one of those things wrong. Either you couldn't see the whole upper part of the body, the hand language, the posture, or the background was seemed unfocused and or noisy. The lighting was not right. So it's crazy to think that after all this work and fancy careers, such details would affect your next role. And this is something that I'm already seeing that's happening. And if you're interviewing in your next role, to your next role through video, then these details are much, much more important than what you might assume, and more important than what I assumed previously also. It just was very evident for me, this importance as the person interviewing for a lot of jobs lately. So this is for the 4 months, for the 4 weeks. For the 4 months period, what's going to happen is that getting interviewed through video actually requires more time. But the interviewing managers don't have the required time to get to know us, okay? And to get to know you and your authentic mission and your authentic view, because it's not so easy to get your message across through video as it is in person. So we need to give the hiring managers the tools and the way to continue to learn about us also beyond and after the conversation. What we need to do is to create blog posts and podcasts and newsletters and social media posts that hiring managers can actually research on us and have a lot of juicy and good materials to find, okay? And of course, it's all stuff related to your knowledge. And I can anticipate that it might be that in 4 months, these knowledge traces, knowledge footprints of yours, this content that you're going to create are going to become job requirements. I can definitely imagine those bullets in the job requirements descriptions that says, okay, you need to have a blog, you need to have a website. We want to learn about you also when you're not there, okay? Because we don't have the time to spend with you online. So give us a way and let us learn about you more also beyond the conversation. So imagine this becoming one of your job descriptions. There is also, in this context, a very interesting research I've read about Zoom exhaustion. And it's a scientific research that they found that when we are speaking through video, we fail to detect very subtle signals that are effortless in person. So in person, you can easily see an eyebrow coming up, or you can easily feel someone's energy. But on video, it doesn't go through. So what's happening? Our brains are actually completing it on autopilot. So our brains are working extra hard, 10 times harder, to complete the missing information that we need in order to assess an opinion. Now, our brains are lazy machines. They don't like to work. So, so this exhausts us. And it becomes yet another Zoom meeting, which is becoming very tiring and very exhausting. So switching to the interviewers, to the hiring manager point of view, they will not be able to keep up to speed with so many candidates being interviewed on Zoom. So this is where the asynchronous process between they wanting to learn about us and us telling about ourselves might be happening in different time periods. So this is when, in 4 quarters, our authority and our leadership in the specialty that you specialize in might become your most important competitive edge. Because remember, we want to give people the way to learn about us and the way we think about design, about UX, also when we are offline. So this is when your specialty becomes your competitive edge. And when we talk about specialty, so we tend to overthink it. You know, like specialty is supposed to be something big and something that nobody else said before on the planet. Well, I don't think that that it should be so dramatic. A specialty can be anything, and each one of you has it. It can be your view on color. It can be your view on illustration. It can be your own special and unique view on how the design process should be made. And your uniqueness is your history. So you don't need to feel that somebody needs to give you the permission in order to develop authority and specialty in a certain niche. A niche is power, and try to think about it. What is your niche? How can you let the world know through your blog posts and social media posts and the knowledge traces that you leave behind? How can you let the world know about this specialty of yours and make your name synonymous to this topic? And it can be anything. Believe me, it can really be anything. Try to think, what is it for you? Going forward to the next 4 years, I'm seeing the hiring process and the interview process as completely asynchronous processes. And it might be that our CVs would be replaced by recorded interviews instead. So companies might have templates with questions that they want us to answer on video. And we would record ourselves answering those questions, which would make the hiring managers save time, interview more people in less time. Of course, if they think that this interview is not going in the right direction, they can cut it much shorter. And if they are interested, then you have your authority and your content to back you up on the web. And think about applying maybe to speak somewhere or something of this sort, where you need to record yourself and talk to the camera and answer certain questions. And when you have such a powerful document, when you record yourself talking about yourself and about your experience and your view and your specialty, then your CV all of a sudden looks like a very mundane piece of documentation, because seeing a movie of you is much far better. And I would like to urge you, as much as I can, to grow your personal brand today and think about those topics. Even if you're not looking for a job right now, keep in mind 2 things. First, your assessment, most of it would happen when you're not in the room. And second, if you're not looking for a job, there will be a time where you will be probably looking for your next challenge or your next venture. So start to build it right now and think about these topics. What do you have to say? And repeat it over and over again, just to prepare the ground for the day that somebody will want to learn about you. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Yonatan. It looks like there's a question from Inshaluddin for you.
Sure.
Do you have any tips or suggestions to give design students, considering the new reality is what you said, who would be graduating this year onwards? Is there anything that you can tell them, like, are there new skills that they need to learn?
Well, beyond what I just said about growing your personal brand, so one thing that would create a huge differentiator for new professionals in the design and UX field is the people who write blog posts and the one that don't. If you write a blog post, it means so much for the hiring managers. I can't really explain how much. You know, it just makes you rise above the noise. This is one. The other thing is to learn as much as you can about product management. The more you know about the product management language, the more you will be able to influence the direction of the products that you will be designing. So, so I guess this would be a good place to start from my perspective.
Thank you. Thanks a ton, Yonatan.
Great.
And
Thank you
that
so much.
brings us to the end of all the presenters. That was quite a ride, like in the Millennium Falcon. I had to bring that up. Sorry, I had to bring that up. It is multiple points of view over one context, and I don't think I'll have the ability to sum it up nicely. And that's why we have Dr. Madan Mohan Rao, or Madan as we know him. He's the research advisor at Asian Media Information and Communication Center, research director at YourStory, and a close friend of DesignUp and all of us. Madan will be doing the closing notes right now. Go ahead, Madan, it's all yours.
Thanks everyone for those 8 outstanding presentations. I will do a couple of articles summing up some of the takeaways, but 4 quick reactions I have. I'll keep you to your 4x4 format. 4 emotions are very important for us today. A sense of gratitude. We are all very lucky to be in homes right now with electricity, broadband, refrigerators, food, all that stuff. But look at the reality outside. Therefore, we need to have some empathy for the other, empathy even among our own colleagues. As Yonatan mentioned, there's Zoom fatigue happening. Some of my colleagues want to come online, but they won't show their face. They're just like, I've had enough. I'll talk to you, but let me not show my face, etc. Third one is dignity. We just had Labor Day celebrated on May 1st, this past Friday. We need to look at how can we give more human rights to not just the old era of industrial laborers, but to gig workers, migrant workers, contract laborers, people of different orientation, differently abled people, etc. So the whole concept of labor rights has to expand and give more dignity to people. Fourth one, a sense of humor. I loved all your presentations, and I saw how a lot of you are coping with reality through a small sense of humor. Now, you could be very careful with, not poking fun at people, which might be insensitive and things of that sort. So you need a bit of a balance when you use that humor. 4 activities we all need to do. Journaling. Keep a daily journal of your personal and professional growth, so you can keep a track of what are you learning, how are you evolving as a person. Second would be introspection, setting goals, setting visions, setting plans, redefining your purpose, and so on. Third is experimentation. We are all startups individually and as organizations. We have to have this startup mentality for life now, given how uncertain things are out there. And last but not least is collaboration. None of us have the answers. We all have to learn to collaborate as people, as communities, as disciplines, as countries. 4 sectors are going to be even more important now than before. Design is going to be very important because physical distancing is going to be the key factor as people emerge after lockdown. So how do you design physical distance? Through physical means, actually through virtual tools, through apps, through AR, VR. All this is going to be needed in every industry. How do planes redesign the seating? How do beaches redesign the beach umbrellas, whatever, all those kinds of things. Second would be healthcare, of course. Somebody mentioned vaccinations. I travel to Africa 4 times a year. I need the little yellow book, the yellow fever vaccination, wherever I go. I will soon need also a COVID vaccination book to show when did I get my last vaccine, how many years is it valid for, etc. Third would be education in the broadest sense of the word, not just school education, but capacity building, corporate training, scaling of agriculture laborers for sustainable agriculture, things of that sort. And the fourth would be finance. Will we ever eventually move towards a universal basic income in India? Many countries have social security. We don't. Can UBI be an answer to some of the problems of migrant workers? And end with 4 time frames. We talked about 4 weeks, months, quarters, years, but there are shorter and longer frames. Even a day can make a big difference. Even 1 hour can make a difference in this day and age. Yesterday, I got a call from Chennai. My mom's cousin passed away, but none of us can go to visit the bereaved family. So only 3 people managed to go to their family. 3 neighbors could come and visit them. Nobody else. Can you imagine in a country like India where 200, 300 people come to your house when somebody passes away? And now nobody can come because of this whole COVID and distancing thing. The second time frame would be beyond 4 years to maybe 10, 20, 30 years, even 40 years. What will the new movies be like? Now, we've had many Hollywood movies about all these scary disasters. Contagion is one of my favorite movies. We haven't yet had a Bollywood movie about this kind of stuff. Maybe the next Irfan Khan will cut his teeth in a role as a migrant worker and what are his travails as he goes through this whole COVID thing, etc. Will we have a museum of infectious disease? I remember I was living in Singapore for a few years. After SARS, they had an exhibition about SARS to teach people about what is the story of SARS. How did it come about? Why did it become a mask society because of SARS? We in India are seeing this now. Every country is becoming a mask society because of COVID-19. So how would we capture this in narratives, in knowledge archives and things of that sort? And I'll end with our very nice Star Wars metaphor. If this is episode 4, the new hope, the hope is that maybe the lockdown will flatten the curve and all that stuff. But next phase is Empire Strikes Back. We're going to go out. All those hardships are there. The virus may come back. We may need to go back into lockdown again. There's going to be economic hardship, policies, finger pointing. What did China do right? What did China do wrong? All that is coming in the next phase. After that is the real phase, which is not just Return of the Jedi, but reinvention of the Jedi. We all need to reinvent ourselves, our values, our ethics, our work practices, organizations, countries to deal with the new normal. I'll end with that. Thank you all so much and look forward to those articles and send me all your presentations. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks a ton, Madan. That was an absolutely fantastic sum up. And I don't think anybody else would have done justice to this fabulous set of presentations. Thanks again. I wish we just could get out and walk and go to the nearest possible pub or get a bottle of wine, sit around and talk, but we can't. Sorry about that. I'm going to hand it over, and thanks a ton for all of you. I'm going to hand it over to JD to kind of talk about what's in store. Thank you for your time. Look forward to meet you all again soon. Goodbye and good night. Over to JD.
Hey. Thanks so much. I'm pretty speechless after these 8 wonderful presentations, each of them so diverse and so different. I think the more I'm watching it sitting here, the more it feels like this is DesignUp in a box, in a small 90-minute capsule. This is what DesignUp is all about, kind of, we're just not talking about the nuts and bolts of doing things, but we're talking about such a wide canvas, such a wide tapestry of things and all of that. The bonus we, of course, have is Star Wars themed, and Himanshu probably has the most awesome background. But yeah, I think, Madan, fantastic summation. We would look forward to getting all the slides from all the speakers together, and we'll share it with all of you. Of course, this is being recorded, so we'll share the recording as well with you very, very shortly. And we have a couple of more things coming up. We have the not so secret life of designers coming up very soon. Apart from that, we will have a regular quiz going on. So just watch the space. Everything gets published at designup.io/circuit 2020 or 2020 circuit as such. So we'll have a lot more, but I really enjoyed. Actually, the best part of this session was that unlike in a typical DesignUp conference, I'm running around and I'm watching half the talks. Like I actually missed Shaheena's talk and I probably kind of peeked in and had a look at it for 20 minutes and someone said, there's a problem, something happened, come with me right away. So those kinds of things keep happening to me. Here, I could actually sit and watch every one of the talk. So in some ways, I'm not regretting this online format at all. But on the other hand, I know that this is so much of inconvenience to a whole huge number of people, maybe the 80, 90% of the population. That's probably not what you want to. But again, as many of you pointed out, as Anshuman pointed out, I think there's a new hope, of course. And I think a lot more collaboration happening between people that would not have happened. I mean, I've probably been involved in a lot of these, and realizing that the government is not just politicians, there's more to it, and there's more minds that you can and should change, kind of, if you can. So with that, I think it's been wonderful having all of you fantastic speakers with us. We look forward to sort of having you over again soon. Many of you are past speakers of DesignUp. So thank you, and thanks for spending the time with us. And thanks to all our attendees who've kind of braved all those issues with registration and be here. We shall see you soon again. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.